I just remember God touching me so powerfully. And it wasn't even at that moment that I really felt, okay, I'm totally free, but I felt like God really was touching me and he had a lot of work to do. And as we were going home and the next day, like it just felt like day by day, like the chains were just like falling off me.
Fall short, but I am sure there'll never be anyone like you. You're strong like your father, even when you were scared. When I was in trouble, you never left me there. And you love like your mother, like there's nothing to lose. You're an unsung hero, so I sing this song for you.
Are you in need of a passport in a hurry? Look no further. Global Passport Express is here to help. With our efficient and reliable services, we can process your passport in as quick as 7 days. That's right, just 7 days. And that's not all. We specialize in visas for many countries, including popular destinations like China, India, and so much more. Whether you're planning a family vacation, a business trip, or your next mission trip, Global Passport Express is your one-stop solution for all your passport and visa needs. So why wait? Reach out to us today at 210-375-7525 to speak with one of our friendly and knowledgeable representatives. They will guide you through the process and answer any questions you may have. You can also visit our website at www.globalpassportexpress.com for more information and to start your application online. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Mention this ad and receive 10% off any of our services. Don't let time constraints hold you back from your travel dreams. Trust Global Passport Express to deliver your passport fast, hassle-free, and with a smile. Global Passport Express, your passport and visa experts. Get ready to explore the world.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Unsung Heroes. I'm Rianne Haff and I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. Today we have really exciting guests on. I'm excited to, I've heard about them, but I've never met them in person, so this is exciting for me. They're missionaries in St. Lucia, and their names are Heath and Renee Flitcroft, and we're really excited to have them. But before that, I'd like to just real briefly talk about, I've had some people contact me over the last few weeks, just they're listening to the episodes and they're asking, how do we hear the other half of the episode? Well, to do that, you have to become a premium subscriber. And what that is you premium subscriber. Supercast is the preferred platform, or Spotify, but also on Apple Podcasts. So on Supercast, it's $3 a month. On Apple Podcasts, it's $4.99 a month, and all the proceeds go to world evangelism. So it really works into tonight's episode because we're actually interviewing a missionary's wife. So I just want to put that out there. If you haven't subscribed to become a premium subscriber, you might want to do that because there's so much more to the stories and you have everything available to you on the podcast. And it's just a really cool thing that we have going on here. And I thank God for it. It's a blessing. So anyhow, having said that, Heath, Renee, welcome to the show. Say hi to everyone.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Hello.
Thank you for agreeing to come on. I'm excited. So
yes,
like I said, I had never met you guys in person, and I began to hear your name about a year ago. We had a young man in our church. He was out here for his welding school. His name's Sean Esparza. So he was just telling us, he was from Las Vegas and telling us, that you were his pastors for years. He grew up under you. And so we began to hear the name, and he just had really great things to say about you guys. You guys have left a really good testimony with people. We had no clue who you were. We had never met Sean Esparza, but, he had really great things to say about you guys. So be encouraged. What you're doing is making a difference in people's lives, even down the road.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, if you guys could tell us a little bit about yourselves, just real quick, like a conference style type of testimony, just where you're at, what you're doing, what's going on, and
You want to
how
do it?
things are going.
All right, all right.
You just came back from conference, so I'm sure you're
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
still
right.
got something to say.
You guys all saw the report, I'm sure. It was a bit wild, I heard. So I kind of blacked out. But anyways, we were discipled and raised up for ministry in Prescott, Arizona. I was there. I grew up there. I spent obviously the first part of my life there under a lot of pastors, a lot of missionaries. They have a lot of stuff happening. But we were sent out, Pastor Greg, Pastor Mitchell, into Las Vegas for 10 years. We were there, and then God called us into St. Lucia. And so that we're currently ministering and pioneering here in St. Lucia. So it's an adventure. We love it. We have 4 children total. We have one. Our oldest is 22. He's in Preston, Arizona, in Peyton. Our next is 21. She's Kendra. She's in Prescott as well. And then we have our 2 little ones we have with us, 11 and 7, Colton and Noah. So that's our family. We've got a couple dogs and you're barking in the background.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's where we are currently, and looking forward to see what God's going to do.
Nice. And I think I share a birthday with your daughter, right, Renee? You told me July 27th.
Oh.
So she just turned 21.
We just did on Saturday.
Nice. So I'm like maybe 9 years older. So
That's right,
well,
girl.
I mean, I've been turning 30 now for 17 years. I've been turning 30. So figure out the math.
Yes, no, that's what I tell people. I'm 25. Forever.
I love it.
Well, Heath, I appreciate you popping on here for a minute. I know this is Renee's testimony of an unsung hero, but if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes of sharing with the audience why Renee is an unsung hero to you and to your ministry, and especially going out on the missionary field. She left 2 kids behind. You know, I'm married to a man that was in the Marines. For him, it was easy. He could throw everything in his big green sea bag or whatever they're called. Let's go. You know, it's different. It's different for the women, and there's a huge sacrifice. And you know, how has she been just through the years an unsung hero to you and your calling?
Yeah, I love to do this because she's not really a limelight kind of girl. I love the limelight. We have a joke about that. Turn the lights on me, let me talk. I'll be wild and crazy. But she's more behind the scenes, and so it doesn't get a lot of recognition. So she's unsung hero because she's done so much in the behind the scenes of my life. Basically, if I could start with what you see of me now, is she's a huge part of that. So obviously, God is number one. In making me who I am today. Pastor Greg has a huge impact. Pastor Mitchell, Pastor Lamb, various pastors who have invested in my headship. But my wife has been just a constant. She's helped me be better throughout life. And so I wouldn't be here like I am now without her. So that's a foundation. I've narrowed it down. I had many things I wanted to say, but I narrowed it down to 3. And so I just kept it down to the basics. First one, she's my ride or die. If you heard my report, I said my ride or die. I mean that, like,
Amen.
If I need to do something crazy, she's the one who's going to help me, dig the hole, bury the evidence. You know what I'm saying? She's the one. So, but like more than jokes, though, she's been there for everything with me. She's taken, a lot of, because I'm crazy. I mean, everyone sees me, I'm fun to watch, but to live with me and to operate with next to me is different. And so she's not just supporting me, like watching me like the rest of the world does. She actually gets it. She's partnership with me. So, when I mean ride or die, I mean it more than anyone else really on this earth could do. We're out outreaching. She's out there with me. I could literally tell her, hey, God, Pastor Greg are talking and God wants me to go to Outer Ubangi or somewhere in the Sahara Desert. She's like, all right, I'll look up flights. Let's do it. If it's from God, I'm going to follow you. So she's always said that to me, whether it's a crazy offering I'm feeling or I'm feeling something. I mean, because I offered to go overseas a lot of times, and China 3 times, India a couple, various places in the U.S. that were not desirable to go preach, but I felt led there. And so she was behind me every single one. So that's the first thing. The second thing is she has an excellent spirit. Now, what I mean by that is like she'll take things. When I first met her, I was amazed that I couldn't believe how a non-mom could be so good at being a mother. So she would be in nursery and she could put the babies to sleep. They would always, I'll give the baby. That's a tough one. Give it to Renee. Give the baby to Renee. She could handle it. She was amazing with just children and then, cooking. She just does everything she does. She just puts everything into it. When we got here, she started doing those, those slides, my sermons, and people text me, "Where'd you get those? You steal those from Prescott?" No, it's my better half right here. She just has that
supporting you, just supporting you.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not just a support like I have to. It's like she's really good at putting more than what's needed. When we first got here, it was pretty tough because cooking isn't like cooking in America where you can go to the store and get all you need. So she has this revolving list that she's been able to do. And we got an evangelist in town, and she woke up in the morning and just had a craving, and she made it happen. I thought she found some secret recipe. It was delicious. And the evangelist was shocked. I was shocked. And I asked her, "Hey, where'd you get that? Is that like Pinterest, or did you get it from a friend?" Or she's like, "Nah, I just had a craving and I made it happen." So just some examples of that. So she's really not just supporting, but she has an excellent spirit as well. And the last thing that I really was thinking, because again, I have many. I could take 90 minutes just doing this. But truthfully, though, there's a love in her. Her heart is gracious for people that I've rarely have seen in a lot of other ways. When we've, living with me, I've gotten this into, my share of mistakes, dumb choices, and the level of having grace just living with me is probably more than normal. But on top of that, she's been there for so many people who, we've had people that are, ministry. People will, you top up their phone, give them this, do that, help them out, and then they leave you, see them again. And she just has grace, a love for people that's very, very genuine. And I appreciate that so much, because when you're trying to be a pastor, you need someone that wants to embrace and love the people. And so, all this is just some of the things that she does just naturally. I don't have to sit down and, "Okay, babe, now we're going to love people today," or,
right.
"Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" Or she just does these things without really any prompting. That's how it is to have. So she's tremendous. And so I just so honored really to have, my ride or die next to me. And there's only one person that can live with me, to be honest. I actually have a joke. Our wedding anniversary, I call it Saint Renee Day. We don't do saints in our religion, but I have one saint that I have to recognize. So you can mark me in your calendar. May 30th is our Saint Renee Day. So
how long have you guys been married?
25 years.
Wow, Renee, I'm proud of you.
She has a very, very large reward in heaven. That's just for that alone.
Right.
Let alone everything else.
Those are just kind things, though, to say. And, a man that finds a wife finds a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. And, man, it makes such a difference when there is a wife on the other end. Because, as pastors, when you get up, you're the one that's behind the pulpit. People are seeing you. You're the one testifying, And so it's, the clapping and the cheering, yay, But it's like, I think sometimes people forget there's a wife and a family behind that man that have sacrificed everything for him to be able to be in that place. And when you do that with just a right heart and a willing heart and a spirit of like, "God, I'm trusting you with my life and my family and my kids," there's a blessing and a covering on that. And to have a wife like that is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I can pay him now.
Yeah.
Well, Heath, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I know island life is probably, you're so busy and have 3,000 things you need to go attend to right now. So we'll let you go, and we'll say goodbye and start getting into Renee's story.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
See you later.
What a nice testimony, huh?
Yeah.
And I said that tongue in cheek because you said island life is pretty mundane, right? So
yes, like sometimes it's like so slow, it takes you all day to do anything. So
right.
We always say we count it a victory if we got one thing done in the day.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you definitely taking your time and being willing to come and share your testimony and share what Jesus Christ has done in your life and through your
Thank you.
husband's ministry and your ministry there. And we just really appreciate you being willing to be a part of this, because it has such a bigger thrust behind it. And, I tell people not everybody can go overseas. Not everybody can go on a missions trip to help a church overseas, but just being a small part here, it all adds up.
Right.
And you are giving, you are supporting, just furthering the gospel. So I appreciate you guys, one, for, being willing to go and be missionaries, because there is a lot when you walk away from what
Yes.
and, but yeah, I'd like to kind of maybe backtrack just a little bit and get into how you grew up. What was your just your background? What did you grow up in a Christian? Just anything that how you kind of your foundation growing up.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of do like a precursor of like my parents, because that like lays the foundation of how I grew up. And so my dad was raised in a military family. He moved around a lot. He was, he said he never went to the same school for a whole year. He moved around his whole life, and he was a military brat. He always would call himself. And his family was very messed up and very broken. His mother was an alcoholic. My dad was a twin, and they lost his brother at birth. And then my dad's 13-year-old brother committed suicide. And, that was unheard of, like back in the day, like,
Right.
that was, so it was a very big, had a very big effect on my dad's family. And so then my mom's family, totally opposite. I mean, not opposite, but they were part of the Ku Klux Klan and the satanic cult. And so my mom was raised in an environment that was just out of control and a lot of crazy things. She was physically and sexually assaulted, and there's just a lot of mishaps there. And so my parents ended up meeting and dating and getting married. And my mom told me that she remembers sitting in her living room broken and just in despair, and she cried out to God, and 5 minutes later the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on her door. And so she truly believed at that moment that that's what they needed to do. And so they became Jehovah's Witnesses. And so then, as time went on, my brother was born, and then I was born. And so I was raised in a very, very, very religious home. I mean, my parents were the most hardcore Jehovah's Witnesses you can find around. My dad was very high up in the church. He was it's called a presiding overseer. He was very high up in the church. And so I was raised going to church every Tuesday, every Thursday, every Sunday, going door to door. My whole existence was Jehovah's Witness religion, my whole life. I mean, I remember being tiny and being, sitting in the chairs looking at my little book of Bible stories and watching my dad preach. But my mom, because of her background, she was a cutter. She had multiple personalities. She was a manic depressant. She had schizophrenia. And so my dad, was so involved in the church and so involved with his work. And then my mom was in and out of institutions, psych wards, hospitals. So that was like the environment that I was raised in, it was just a very chaotic, demonic realm. And so there was a lot of demonic things that happened in my childhood that I just thought were normal, because those were things I was raised with. And so like at about 13, we were left to ourselves. I had a brother who was 4 years older than me. And so we were left to ourselves a lot, because my dad did work a lot. And then he was very involved with the church. And then, like I said, my mom was in and out of the hospitals. And so that left me and my brother alone. And so by the time I was 13, I was just out of control. I had been kicked out of school. I was so deep into drugs and alcohol and just trying to find a purpose. And I was only 13, and I just remember like never being able to satisfy any like loneliness or sadness. I never understood like why our family, because then to raise as a Jehovah's Witness, I was separated in school because I wasn't allowed to have Jehovah's Witness friends. So like at school, I was taken out of class if there was any kind of like history lesson or birthday party or anything that didn't coincide with our religion. I was taken out of class and I would have to go to the library. But then at the Jehovah's Witness, at the Kingdom Hall, I was separated there because people didn't want their children to be in our homes because my mom was weird. My mom was crazy. And so we grew up very lonely and very ostracized and very separated. And that built like a structure for rejection and a structure for, just unhealthy habits and mindsets. And because I knew that my parents loved us, but it was like so unhealthy at our home that I hated authority. I had no respect for men. There was just a lot of like ingrained things in my life that laid that foundation. And so my mom would tell me stories of the way she was treated by my grandpa and other men. And so it was just like every guy that was around me, my dad never physically hurt us, but like every guy that was around was just kind of like this like ick, everybody was just like, men were mean, men were awful, men were just this thing that hurt people. So
right.
I just kind of like built that in my mind, so by 13, I was so filled with anger and hatred and bitterness and resentment that it started playing out. And so by the time I was 13, I was kicked out of school and, trying to figure out life because like I said, we were left alone a lot. And my brother decided to move out. He went and moved in with one of his friends from high school. And so then I was really alone. Like the one person I had, he then left me too. And so again, there laid another foundation of hurt and, disappointment and rejection and all the things that, built me up to who I was when I finally got saved. Between 13 and 18, I just got really deep into sin. Every person I could hurt, I hurt. Every person I could steal from, I would steal from. I was about 16 the first time my parents kicked me out. I was out and a family took me in, and that ended up being a really bad situation. And I ended up going back home for a little bit, and then my dad kicked me out for good when I was 18, and I was homeless on the streets in Denver, Colorado, just trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And the crazy part was that I had a really good job. I worked at a car rental place that I stole from them. I stole thousands of dollars, and I was on the verge of getting in a lot of trouble. And so I ended up giving up that job. And I could never keep friends. I could never keep jobs. I could never, it was always that like, always trying to just stay one click before, I got in trouble, or one step ahead of everyone else. And so, so it just kind of left me at that spot where I was on the streets of Denver, Colorado.
So is that where you grew up, in Colorado?
Yeah, so I grew up in a little town called Broomfield, and it's just a suburb of Denver. But after my parents kicked me out, I kind of had to find like friends and stuff. So I stayed with a lot of my drug addict friends, which you never know where you're gonna sleep, who you're gonna sleep with, what you're gonna do. So I just kind of bounced back and forth between Broomfield and Denver, which is, it's relatively close, like 15 minutes. But
So when you were growing up, you said your mom was institutionalized for a time. How long was she actually gone out of the home in
It would be
treatment?
like, I can remember as early on as 3. I was 3 years old. I can remember her bouncing in and out.
Okay.
There
And how
was
many kids were in the home at that time?
just me and my brother, my older
Okay.
brother. Yeah, he's 4.5 years older than me. So, but I just and we would have, we would go to like people's houses and people would watch us, and then my dad would pick us up after work, and people would help him, but until we got older, and then he just finally like would leave us to ourselves. And it seemed like the older we got, the more he worked and the more he was gone, and so then the more we were left to ourselves. But she would be gone sometimes months, because then she was also anorexic, and so she would go into these anorexic rehabs, and those take months to get out of. So
Right.
she wasn't around a lot. And then there was a period of time where my parents actually separated, which is like very against the Jehovah's Witness rules, but they separated and she had her own place. And I actually remember that being some of the most peaceful time in our home. That was some of the times that I felt at the most peace in our home. And I think it was because that demonic realm was like removed out of our home.
Right. So you
Yeah.
said it was on your mom's side of the family. They were involved with the KKK.
Yes.
So as a child, was racism imparted into you, or had she already moved away from that after you were born?
Yeah, she had already moved away from that. Our home, I didn't learn a lot of this about like my grandparents until I got older. I think until like, we could understand. I had only met them one time in my whole life, and I was very, very little, I think maybe 1 or 2. And so we never had any kind of racism built into us. Like there was never 1 ounce. And so I really wouldn't have known that was that way. I actually found out when I was 16 because my brother ended up marrying a girl who had some Indian in her. And I don't know the circumstances. I don't know what all that happened, but my mom sent a picture of something to her parents and showed them my nephew, and they were like, "He's not all white, is he?" And she was like, "No, he's mixed." And they were like, "We don't ever want to see another picture of him again."
Wow.
And I was like, "What is that about?" Like that, it shocked me. And so I was 16 when I actually found out that's how, and they told us what was going on. So that was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
So with your mom in and out of mental health treatment, hospitals and things, how did you, as just a young girl and then going into being a young woman, how did you kind of carry yourself with that? Did you have a hard time kind of figuring out who you were as a young woman? Did you struggle with like your identity as far as, just like having that mother wound of her not really being there to raise you and to help you through like the difficult times, when you begin to become a teenager? And did you have any type of like positive female influence in your life, or was it just you were figuring things out on your own?
I pretty much figured it out on my own. It wasn't until I got saved that, someone did. But yeah, no, I definitely struggled with that. Like I said, we weren't really accepted in school. We weren't really accepted at church. So it was kind of like we were totally left to ourselves to figure it out. And so there were times like if we wanted to eat, we had to figure it out. We had to figure out what to cook. We had to figure out how to make it. And so, so I didn't really have a lot of, influence on how to be a woman or how to be a mom or how to even be a girl a lot of the time, because it was my dad and my brother. And so I'm actually surprised that I'm not more tomboyish, because a lot of my childhood was wrestling with my brother and my dad and, doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I just kind of figured it out. And I think, I would want so desperately to have a relationship with her, but I felt like the mother. I felt like,
Right.
because
Right.
even when she was home, I was the caretaker. I was the person who, would find her when she would have episodes, or because nobody wanted to deal with her. So even 13 years old, I'm driving her to the hospital because, she had cut herself, or, had an episode. And so I felt like I was the caretaker. And so it made me resent her a lot.
Right. Right.
I resented her as a mom.
Do you feel going through those things, that's going to open a door to so much rejection, but also fear as a child? Like, our children look to us, we take care of them, and that's our responsibility. So as a child, not even knowing where your next food was coming from sometimes, or, just seeing your mom like that, did that impart like a spirit of fear on you that you maybe recognized as you got older that you had to be delivered from? Because that's an intense battle to deal with when you have that
absolutely
mom wound.
And it did live in fear because I didn't understand the demonic realm. I was just a kid, and so things would happen at our house, and it was scary. There was scary things that happened, and I just thought that was a part of everybody's life, but it was scary, and things would happen, and I remember I had a bed, and then like above my bed I had these big, like almost like big drawer, like, but they were like cabinets, but like they had slider doors, and they were like a big square, and I would get up in those and sleep in those because it was like off the ground, and I could like close the door and be inside of that, like, and nobody could get to me. And I remember like sleeping in those a lot because it was so, like, I had a lot of fear as a kid. I couldn't sleep with my door open because it scared me, and hearing things at night. My mom would go have episodes and have manic moments, and you hear your mom do that, and it's like, it's just not normal. So a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of rejection. So it was.
Right. And did you have demonic like activities happening in your home as well because of what was being opened up?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Yeah, a lot of demonic stuff happened, and not understanding it, you just feel like, that person over there, he's always there. But it's like, that's not normal. Having like a ghost in your house is not normal.
Right.
Having things move and things happening in your home is not normal. So there was a lot of things that, and I would tell people, and they would be like, what? Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? And then, it became interesting to me and my friends as we became older. Then we started getting into like the Ouija board because my mom started talking about like what she did with the Ouija board as a kid. And so that intrigued interest in us. So then we started doing things. So then little did we know, we were inviting more demonic realm
activity
and opening that door and thinking it was cool and fun, and we would do crazy things, and then you get high on top of it, and then you're adding in more demonic. So
right I think you're seeing the spiritual more clearer when you're playing with and doing it when you're on drugs and things, because it doesn't have to be hidden. That was part of my testimony as a teenager as well. That's why I was asking you, like, because I understand that fear and that rejection and that loneliness, but just that intense anxiety and fear. But then as a teenager, same thing, my friends and I began to open that door, playing with Ouija boards and doing drugs and things, and some demonic scary things had happened.
And because when you open those doors and you have all those feelings and all the emotions, and then drugs and the demonic, and then I felt lonely so much that like I would do anything to have a guy or a friend, or so I was one of those people that literally like would do anything to be accepted. And so like if it meant like smoke the whole thing of crack, then I'll do it, because if everybody's like, let's do this, I would do it instead of being rejected by someone. And so that also led me to being promiscuous and having so many boyfriends and guys in and out. And then, as I got older too, I only use guys for my next drug deal. Like I only dated guys who were drug dealers and he would go to jail and I'd be like, all right, next one, because I didn't want to pay for my drugs. I wanted to, get them for free. So it just led me to a very like lonely, broken state. And
those weren't for free, the price you paid, as you, I'm sure when you got saved, the price you paid for that,
Yes.
But yeah, just those doors opened. Let's move in now through your teens. So you get through your teens, get through high school. Where did you become a Christian? Were you in Colorado at the time? How did that come about in your life?
So my brother, he was a huge influence in my life. He's actually the one who got me involved in all the things I was doing, because we were all we had. So even though he moved out, he would come and get me and take me, and I'd spend the weekends with him and whatnot. So he's the one that actually got me really deep into drugs and drinking and partying and all the things. And so he ended up moving to Prescott, Arizona to go to school. Well, he never made it to school. He ended up meeting a backslider in our fellowship and ended up getting her pregnant. And so they ended up having a baby, and he was at that point so deep into drugs. He was one of the biggest drug dealers in the Prescott area, and he was on the verge of going to prison. He had just gotten caught with a 9-ball of crack, and so he was on the verge of going to jail, and he ended up getting saved. And so I had gone and visited him in Prescott and was like, this is the worst town in the whole world. I would never live here. This place is awful. Who would live in this little, hick town? Right. But, he called us one day. All I remember is him not cussing the entire time. I'm going to take my glasses off because that glare is driving me crazy. So he didn't cuss the entire conversation. And every time I talked to him, it was like the F word, every other word, or this cuss word or that cuss word. And he didn't cuss. And I was like, what happened to you? What's going on? Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, I went to church and I got saved. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because we went to church our whole lives and it never changed us. And so he just kind of like witnessed to me. I actually can't even really tell you what he said, or, it wasn't really this like profound witness. Like I was like, oh, what must I do to be saved? But I just remember hearing the difference in his voice. And so time went on. And like I said, I was living on the streets. And at this point I had $5 to my name and I had nothing. And so I called him one day and I was really scared. I had just gotten into kind of a weird situation with a guy that I was doing drugs with. And so I called him and I was like, I need you to come pick me up. And I only have $5 and I don't think I can make it all the way from Denver to Arizona with $5, even though gas then was only like 90 cents or something. So I filled up my tank and he met me halfway and he drove me back to Prescott. And I think that was on like a Friday, and that Saturday I went to the underground. That's the music scene that the Prescott church used to have. And I went down and it was this horrific country band that was like so bad. And they would be so mad at me for saying that. But like, I hated country music. It was awful. But the Spirit of God like touched me. And I started crying during one of the songs. And my brother's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just crying. And I didn't end up getting saved that night. But I just remember feeling so touch just being in there, even though I hated every second of it and I felt so uncomfortable. And looking back, obviously now I know why I felt uncomfortable and why I was crying. It was definitely the Spirit of God. It wasn't for another few days that I ended up getting saved. I did end up going to church. I was maybe 100 pounds. I had like barely any clothes on, and I ended up I was so embarrassed. I was like, I'm not going to the altar, wearing this. But I prayed with one of the ladies in the back of the building, and I just remember God touching me so powerfully. And it wasn't even at that moment that I really felt, I didn't feel like, okay, I'm totally free, but I felt like God really was touching me, and he had a lot of work to do. And as we were going home and the next day, like it just felt like day by day, like the chains were just like falling off me. And I just remember like waking up and feeling so free and so forgiven. But I had to go back to Colorado, and I still had, I had to do stuff there. I still had my job and whatnot. And so I went back and I went head first back into my sin. And I didn't know, I didn't know. I didn't have a church. I didn't have any really reference points other than what I had just gone through for that last week. And so it was really when it just all fell to the ground and I really hit rock bottom. I went back out to Arizona, and I ended up moving in with my brother and, really going to church and really serving God. And so that's how I ended up in Prescott getting saved.
So how old were you at that time?
I was 18.
And your brother is how much older than you?
What was that?
And your brother's how much older than you?
He's 4.5 years. So he was 22, almost 23. Yeah. So he actually would have been 23 the next month after I got saved, because I got saved in September. And then he would have turned 23 the next month.
So back to your parents, just real briefly, did your mom and dad ever get out of the religious church they were in, or did she ever receive any type of healing in her mental health?
No. So I'll get to that more as like I talk a little bit more about like like a little bit later, because it's even more of the story later on. But no, they didn't. And that was the thing, is after I got saved and I ended up moving in with my brother and getting a job and, really making roots in Prescott, I had to go back to Colorado to get my stuff. And I had just bought a car. So I stopped paying the payments, and I don't know why I got a car, but my dad agreed to trade my old car for the new car. And so I was going back to get my old car. And so when I was there, my dad changed his mind. And so I had to actually like break into their house and get my stuff. And it was a mess, but we got my stuff. And at that moment, it was when my parents decided, like, if you leave and you walk out of this house, you will not ever have a relationship with us ever again. We will no longer speak to you. We will no longer have a relationship with you. And so they said, if you make that choice now, just know that you made that choice. And me and my brother did end up, we left with my stuff in my car and all the things, and drove back to Prescott. That was in November of 98. Yeah, 98. And so I had met Heath in church, and we were friends. All the teenagers hung out together. We, it was a big group of all of us teenagers. We hung out constantly. And, Heath and I started talking and, just hanging out in groups. And and I knew that he liked me, but I wasn't really like there yet. I had just gotten out of, that was another thing, is I was engaged to someone else in Colorado, another Jehovah's Witness. I was not another, but a Jehovah's Witness. I was engaged to him. And so even though I was a drug addict and I was an alcoholic and I was dating all these other people, I was somehow engaged to a Jehovah's Witness because I was still trying to play the good Jehovah's Witness role, because that's what we're expected to do. And so I had broken that off, obviously, and when I moved to Prescott. So I wasn't really in a spot mentally to date, and I was a new convert, and so I didn't understand the whole no dating thing, so I remember Pastor Alston was our assistant pastor, and I remember him telling me, like, you can't date him. And I was like, you can't tell me what to do. And he was like, yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Like, no, you can't. Who are you, And so, and that was the other thing. When I got saved, people were nice to me, and I was like, why are you being nice to me?
Mm-hmm.
I had a
Because you
couple
weren't used to that. You weren't
yeah.
used to probably females just reaching out and genuinely showing interest in you as
Yes,
a young woman. It was probably really foreign. So it was like,
it
okay,
was.
what do you want?
It
And
was.
that
And
kind of leads into like my next question. When you gave your life to Christ, did you feel like an immediate kind of change and shift in the way you felt? Like, did it fill that need and that desire to be loved and accepted? How you were trying to find that in men. Did it fill that need, or was that something that
um,
God kind of had to work with you to, for
God
the just that
definitely,
acceptance with people and
yeah.
just things?
Yeah, I mean, I had such a deep rooted hatred for people. I really hated people. I mean, and that's, people like joke about that, like, oh, I didn't like people. Like, I literally hated people. Like, I would start fights with people just because I didn't like your face. Like, you annoyed me. The way you stood annoyed me, and I would start a fight with you. And so I genuinely didn't like people. And so when I got saved, my harshness went away, because as a Jehovah's Witness, I know this sounds so crazy, but we are raised to be very prideful, very like, you're not going to tell me I got my life together. And so it was ingrained in me to be prideful. And so I had a lot of pride and a lot of just like I said, anger and bitterness and hatred. And so I did have like a compassion when I got saved. I started having a compassion for people, and I started to love people genuinely. But it definitely dealt with the spirit of rejection for many, 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 many,
Right.
many, many, many years.
Honestly, I think a lot of people, myself included, that have had kind of similar type of backgrounds, like we get saved, God does amazing miracles in our lives, but you still deal with that even decades down the road, because
Yes,
it'll just pop up. Somebody can say something will happen, and it'll immediately put you back to how you felt when you were like 12 years old, or because it's that familiar spirit, I think, that always tries to gain ground. And so it's always, I think, good to revisit, God, I
yeah,
renounce any generational curses, draw
yeah,
a bloodline
absolutely.
protection around me, around my family, because it is, when you grow up certain ways, there's certain things you're always going to have your guard up and understand Satan's always going to try to come back. Can you just for a minute, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just real briefly, maybe, because I know there are young girls that listen to the Unsung Heroes. I actually just had a friend reach out to me. Her teenage daughter listens to the Unsung Heroes.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to the young girls listening that might be looking for that kind of acceptance in the world? Maybe they've had situations in their life where they feel, I can only find my value with giving my body to a man, or just doing those kinds of things, doing drugs. Can you just real briefly speak to maybe somebody that might be struggling with that kind of rejection, and just offer them a little bit of hope? Because
Yeah.
obviously you were able to overcome that, and just by the words of your husband's testimony in the beginning, really expressed well how much you love people, but by your own words, you were taught to hate people
Right.
growing up, and God helped you with that. Just real briefly, if you could speak to maybe some of the young ladies
Yeah.
out there, just their
Yeah.
value that they have in Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it doesn't matter like how many people have hurt you, how many people have, even abused you physically, sexually, mentally, and how broken we feel, and how much we've given ourselves to those things of the world, if it's, sex or drugs or alcohol, or, even just, it doesn't even have to be sex. It can just be being promiscuous, like I watch some of these girls on online, social media, and they just like put themselves out there, and you can just feel their spirit like through their pictures, which is like so crazy to say, but you can feel it.
Right.
And there's so many times, even when I'm outreaching, you see these hurting girls who, it's like, put some clothes on, girl, but the reason they don't have clothes on is because they're looking. And I used to be that girl, and so my heart hurts for them so much. And so I just want to say, like, God is such a healer of that. Like, God fills that void so incredibly. Like, he can can take that heart and mend it 100% and make you feel like, you know, I used to always hear people say, like, when you get saved and you give your life to God, he can make you feel pure again and make you feel whole again. And clean. And I would just be like, that's crazy, because the way I feel, like, there's no way, because I just remember feeling gross, like, all the time. And God has made me feel so, like, sometimes I tell my testimony and I feel like I'm lying, or people will say, there's no way you're lying, that, you know, because like, and it's because God has done such a work, and he's the only one that can do something like that. No guy, no drug, no alcohol, no party, no, like, nothing will ever make you feel whole the way Jesus does. And Jesus is the only one that can truly cleanse you from the inside out and take away every ounce of want, every ounce of need, every ounce of feeling unworthy. God gives you that worth. And, you know, I really never understood that until I was a little bit older, and I was married, and I would always look to my husband for words of affirmation, or words of, like, you know, am I doing a good job? Am I doing this right? And I would, even with other people, I was always, like, fearful that I wasn't doing enough or wasn't. And it was like, God just really one day just gave me this revelation, like, I am all you need. Will you serve me if I am all you have? If you lost everything, would you still serve me? Because I am all you need. And I was like, whoa, like, I can do this without anyone else's approval. I only need Jesus's approval.
Right. Because God said you're enough to him.
Yes. And so that was, like, really freeing to me. And so I just want to, you know, encourage the girls out there, like, God can just restore. He's a God that restores. He's a God that cleanses. He's a God that heals. And if you just give it to him, and it may seem lonely at times, like I was just telling my daughter the other day, like, there are times when you feel so lonely as a girl. Like, guys, I feel like can sometimes, like, just, like, go with the flow, and girls need that, like, we need relationships, and we need love, and we need those words of affirmation. But I tell her all the time, go to the Word of God, go to his word, speak his promises over your life, because he is the only one that's truly going to fulfill that. There's never going to be a guy or a job or, you know, money or whatever it is that you're searching for that is going to fulfill that. And I know from personal experience, and it wasn't until I truly was like, okay, God, I am so sick of looking to other people and other things, and comparison, you know, comparison is a thing that really haunts women. I was talking to a friend today about comparison. It steals us of our joy, and God is the only one that can give that, you know, give us that joy and that peace. So
that was really, really, really well put. I think that's going to help a lot of people, honestly. And I definitely want to hear more about your discipleship experience, and just kind of how you were actually allowed to start dating, and, you know, how you got married. But we're going to go ahead and save the rest of that conversation for our premium subscribers. And if you do want to subscribe, you can, the links are in the show notes below. $1 goes to world evangelism. And so we're going to say goodbye to our regular listeners right now. And thank you so much for joining us. And we will be right back.
You're my unsung hero, and I sing this song for you.
Hi, I'm Mike Ashcraft, pastor currently in Van Nuys, California. Pastor, man of God, your wife left everything to follow you in your dream. Are you going to leave her with nothing? The Bible says, he who doesn't provide for his own is worse than an unbeliever and has denied the faith. As men of God, we're ready to stand before God due to tragedy at any moment's notice. But what about our families? What happens to them if we were to die? There's an easy financial solution so that they don't have to go through poverty or destitution. Call me today, 310-403-6471. That's 310-403-6471.